That should sound familiar to a lot of you guys, and girls too, probably. Welcome to the special pre-release viewing of Manchu, A Brotherhood of Sacrifice, a film by Matt Wilcox. We're pleased to have you here, very pleased with the turnout. My name is Larry James. I'm a Manchu, and happy to be here to help with the festivities today. Before we get started, I would like to recognize some special people in our audience. So if I may, I would like the Gold Star families to please stand and receive our appreciation. So if Gold Star family members would please stand up, we're glad to have you with us. And next, if we could have the Manchu veterans to please stand up. And fellow Vietnam veterans, please stand up. And all veterans, please stand up and receive our appreciation. As I say, we have a pretty full schedule today, and before we get to the film, which will be in just a few moments, we have a special presentation to make. Bill Hinchy, who's a city council member from Fulton, Missouri, is going to be here to read a special proclamation on behalf of the mayor of Fulton, Missouri. Bill?
Good evening. I'm Bill Hinchy, a city council of First Ward, and I have the great honor of reading the mayor's proclamation. He's not able to be here this evening. He has another engagement down south. Official proclamation. Whereas Stan Adams and David Hosenfeld, proud natives of Callaway County, stand as shining examples of courage and resilience, their remarkable journey from rural Missouri to the battlefields in Vietnam. Their stories serving as a powerful reminder of sacrifice and valor, and a driving force behind Stan Adams' Vietnam memoirs, Mocaine to Mole City, published January 2019 and released in audio format on May 2022 by Wolfner Library. And Matt Wilcox documentary, Manchu, A Brotherhood of Sacrifice. And whereas, drafted in 1968, David Hosenfeld and Stan Adams bravely served with the renowned 4th Battalion, 9th Infantry, Manchu Regiment of the 25th Infantry Division. Enduring the trials and combat, their bravery and unwavering determination exemplifying the strength and selflessness of military heroes under a particularly in Thanksgiving of Eve Battle, November 27th, 1968, when David Hosenfeld, despite being wounded himself, rendered medical aid to save the life of his comrade, James Everett. And on December 22nd, 1968, when Stan Adams and the other Manchu fought valiantly against the enemy attack on their base camp in Mole City. And whereas, with help from Stan's wife, Rita Russell Adams, Matt Wilcox of Spring Hill, Florida, have spent countless hours of interviewing Manchus and the helicopter pilots who supported them, investing his own funds to bring their stories to life in his documentary, Manchu, A Brotherhood of Sacrifice. And whereas over 58,000 Americans gave their lives during the Vietnam War, including 10 from Callaway County, Missouri, and 428 Manchus, including 3 awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. And it is therefore our solemn duty to honor and sacrifice Stan Adams and David Hosenfeld, the Manchus, and all the veterans, all the Vietnam veterans, whose bravery and dedication to duty will forever be remembered. And to say to all veterans, welcome home. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Steve F. Meyer, on behalf of the City Council of Fulton, Missouri, extend our deepest gratitude to these local heroes as we honor them in our service today. I have hereunto set my hand to the cause of the official stamp and seal of the City of Fulton, Missouri, this 18th day of May 2024, signed by Steve Myers, Mayor of Fulton. Thank you.
So we have another commemoration to make, a recognition to make, and that's going to come in the person of Bob Connor, who is here to tell us a little bit about a humanitarian effort he was involved in that had a lot of direct, it affected all of us, and it has affected the Manchus in particular. So, Mr. Connor, if you don't mind.
The project I started back in 2016 was with the help of the influence of my granddaughter, wanting to do a project about Vietnam. It soon turned out that she later changed her mind for whatever reason, and child that age, junior or senior in high school, telling what they're thinking about and how long it's going to last. But in any event, that's what started me on it. I went back on Google Earth, I posted on the Benoit Air Base where I was during the illustrious Tet vacation of '68, and where we were attacked by, at the time we were told 1,800. Later we found out it was 2,500. We found the first grave that we put on the base. It contained 150, so we thought. They found 80. This grave we found out later on was disturbed by construction. They had no idea. First, when I put the post down on Google Earth, within 10 days I had an email from a Vietnamese former NVA soldier who obviously I didn't know anybody in Vietnam. I got the idea after I saw the funeral service in Vietnam of the 12 that they found, the 82 that they found at the first grave. They found the identities of 12 of them based on art that they would do and sign their name to it, and letters from home, and that's how they pieced together the 12. They had the funeral service in July of 2017, and at Benoit at the Dong Nai Military Cemetery, I should say. The last person in line behind the one casket, the first one, is a family member. And when you see the tears in her eyes, you know right away that closure. This woman has finally found her husband or boyfriend, not her boyfriend, her father or brother, 49 years later, walking in front of him. That's what convinced me to start it. Right now, I've got 8 members, all volunteer. We collect no money. We don't seek any funding at all. We do it all ourselves. We do all the research on the battles. We drill down to the individual unit that was there, such as the Manchus, Mole City, all to drill down to who eventually walked off the base to do the search to pick up the bodies. And we eventually get the details of where they're located. We pin it down to a northeast coordinate. We overlay it on the Google Earth so they know, they see a comparison of where it is today, where it was 55 years ago. And from that, that's the ultimate goal, is to give that information to them, and they carry it forward to do the soil sampling, testing, and finally the excavation, which they are eager to do in Mole City. Somebody asked me, why do I do it? Well, we do it for the families. They're no different than our own Gold Star families. They share the same pain every day, Every ceremony that's with the family, they always look back and wonder look at who's not there. So I do it for the families. Anyway, for the Manchus, very proud of being able to have the opportunity to work with you. Continue to finalize some of these grave sites where the actual graves are at Mold City. Hopefully we can wrap that up. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, now the reason we all came here is we're about to preview this extraordinary film that we're pleased to have the opportunity to do so. We'll be the first people who've seen it other than the people who put it together. So if Matt Wilcox can come up and say a few words about the project that he got started on and the end result.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out this evening and sharing with us this pre-release film. This is an opportunity for us to see the film in its last edit form. And what that means is that it has not been released to any film festivals or to any streaming centers yet. So I want you guys to share with us and what we see here. If you have any comments afterwards, please let me know. That'd be great. I want to quickly say thank you to Stan and Rita Adams for all that they have done with this. So please give them a hand around. Thank you. And applause. I also want to thank the Manchus. What you guys have gone through is beyond belief, and this film hopefully does a little justice to that. But unfortunately, I don't think anybody will ever truly understand what you guys went through. So please have a round of applause for them as well. All right. I have to say this, and I would be remiss. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Lynn. It has been a difficult journey doing this thing. It's taken us 4 years to put it together, and I've had the beautiful opportunity of talking to veterans, some of which are not with us today. And I'm happy to share their stories with you today. So please enjoy the film. I will, again, take questions or comments afterwards, but other than that, if we could start the show, that would be great. Thank you, guys.
One day we got in the hot LZ, if you would, and that was really a terrible day for me and everybody else I know.
It was actually Thanksgiving Eve that it happened. We were on, they called it seek and destroy missions. The spotter planes would see fresh digging or enemy movement or something, they would mark it on a map. Then they would prep the area with artillery, and then we would fly in looking for body counts and weapons and food caches and stuff like that. Well, the day it happened, we were supposed to go to 5 different locations, and we'd made 2 of them. We had 10 choppers with 6 fighting men on each chopper. We'd made 2 locations with no trouble or anything, and it was like 11 o'clock, and Captain told us all, said, we're gonna knock off for dinner, so somebody got in trouble and needed our choppers. And I was so hot, and now I didn't even eat I took 1 bite of a pork patty and threw my lunch away. And then about 1 o'clock, he said, everybody saddle up, we're going to our next mission.
We flew in. I think there was 5 choppers went in first and then 5 more behind us. And I was in about, I think, the 2nd chopper, and it was a hot LZ, and I remember there was a gunship beside me just firing all he could fire, and he was just terrible. We just couldn't believe how much shooting was going on.
And we were going into a rubber plantation, and all hell broke loose.
Roger, we have visual on contact.
I jumped out of the helicopter about 20 foot off the ground. They just hollered, "Get out, get out." I never even knew when I hit the ground. I was so scared that I would forget to breathe. And I'd go, and oh, I gotta breathe, you know. And they was shooting down that elephant grass. It'd fall across my back. It'd feel like a telephone pole hit on there. There was estimated 2,000 in the wood line, and we flew into it with 60 people. 17 got killed going in.
So the question of the narrator, Joe Jeffrey, I had gone through about 15 different people to find the correct narrator, and finally I found this man outside of Texas, and when I heard his audition, I was very impressed with the way he sounded, and I said, you know what, I want to hear another part of the script. So what we did, of course, is I had to write the script, and then I had to go through it time and time to make sure that it sounded okay for Joe to read. And he's been very involved with this project, obviously, and he was invited. He couldn't make it. Granddaughter's graduating today, so that kind of thing. But nonetheless, I think he did a
Well, you can tell him he
job.
has at least one fan. I
Yeah,
thought he
absolutely.
did a great
I think he did a good job.
Yeah. And you should know also, anyway, you might find it interesting that Tom Pienta, the helicopter pilot who was so severely burned on Thanksgiving Day, is a friend of mine. We went through OCS together, and after OCS, we shared a house in Columbus, Georgia, while he waited to go to helicopter pilot school. And I didn't know that he was there that day until like 30 years after the fact. But an interesting little footnote to this, and nobody's asked this question, but I've done a little research too on the Vietnam War, and it's really sort of, I'll touch on this later tonight, but sort of frustrating that there was so much coverage of the Vietnam War before, during, and after. You'd think, boy, you wouldn't have any trouble finding out this stuff. Is it hard to find out this stuff you were trying to find out? I think the answer is probably pretty darn hard.
So, doing any documentary, you have to do the historical research, and this project took 4 years to do. And one of the things as a historian is that you have to find the archival evidence to indicate what happened. Unfortunately, in Vietnam, a lot of the archival material, a lot of the material that was used at that time, was slightly skewed towards one side or the other, so it wasn't totally factual. What we had to base ourselves on was oral histories, oral interviews, finding correlations between the veterans, and then, of course, putting the pieces together. That's very difficult to do from a bottom-up perspective. And the reason why it's so difficult is that you're dealing with stories that are 50 years old now, and we have to go through it and actually vet it and make sure it actually happened. That process alone is quite difficult. And of course, matching it with the original records that happened of battle reports or anything else that we could find and put our hands on. So everything had to be verified over and over and over. And that's why before we produce anything, publish anything, it has to be accurate, it has to be real. So I can rest assured that what you saw today happened. Everything is as it were. And there are always questions about perspective. when it comes to a documentary, because you're dealing with individuals that maybe were on one side of the battlefield, and what someone saw on the other side of the battlefield was different. So we have to kind of connect those pieces. And one of the biggest things in history is understanding bias, and knowing that you have to work with bias to actually vet that system into a cohesive history so people can actually comprehend it, understand it. So yeah, it was a little bit of a difficult challenge, but nonetheless, we had some great stories going in. We had some great records to look at, and it worked out pretty well, I think. You know, the Agent Orange section, we had to make sure that was accurate as well. And Joe, my narrator, I had to put the phonetic saying of it on the script because he did not like me for that particular part of the scene.
I can imagine.
But nonetheless, we were able to do that, and it is actual to what it is. Now, maybe not in a general audience would you care about the actual chemical formation or formulation, but it gives credation to what the thing is, what Agent Orange was. And we didn't talk a lot about it, but there were other colors as well. 20 million gallons of herbicide were used in Vietnam and surrounding areas. With that said, they had Agent White, Agent Blue, Agent Yellow. Agent Orange was the most proliferated defoliant, and it was also the most toxic. And sad enough, it was used in a way because it was effective. And as Mr. Finch so eloquently said in his interview, it was something that was effective for tomorrow. And when our troops went through it, they had no idea what the consequences of that would be. And sad enough, even today, it took many, many years for the VA to recognize that and to actually give any kind of help. And usually that help only is followed by a cancerous diagnosis. And unfortunately, everybody that was in Vietnam, I can't officially state that, but most people were in contact with Agent Orange. And that is something that the U.S. government is still paying for today. This is one of those things that when we talk about wars or conflicts, we like to think that it ended in 1975. It did not. Agent Orange is still affecting men today, people today. And it's going to be continuing to affect people up until the last veteran is no longer with us. And it's a sad fact, but that's something that we need to consider before conflicts begin. So.
We want to know where it's going to be shown.
So right now it is being entered into film festivals. It will not be out to the general populace yet. We have to go through the film festival cycle, and there are quite a few of them that we are putting it through, as well as entering it into some other film awards through the Library of Congress and a Ken Burns kind of award that would help us to be able to put this out into a greater area or a greater audience. The goal will be to put it onto Netflix, but that's where we would hope for the general populace to be able to watch it. And of course, when you're bored one night, you can just type it in on Netflix and find it and watch it. So.
Oh, Dave Young has something he would like to share. Here, you can use this mic or that one. Use that microphone if you want.
I was there November 27th, 1968. What I brought today is the actual menu. They gave us a Thanksgiving Day dinner the day after all this happened. They brought out canisters of food to us, and the menu says they brought us turkey and all. We were so upset, we just, sat there and cried. We didn't really enjoy it. But this is the actual menu that they gave us. It's got a message from Westmoreland in it. This I have never shown to anyone. It's a hammock, an NVA hammock that that I got when we went into the wood lines. We were policing the woods, and this was my souvenir that I brought home, and I've never shown it to anyone until this time. But this was there that day. I have one other thing I wanted to share, and that, I'm sorry, I was speaking into the microphone, is Armando Gonzalez. He had been in country just a short period of time, and he just a real newbie. So when we went in, we all had to jump. The bullets were flying through our chopper, and we jumped maybe 20 foot two to the ground. But Armando never celebrated Thanksgiving thereafter. All these years, and in 2021, he got COVID. He lived in El Paso. He was taken to Houston, where he spent about 6 months, and he was at some point they let him fall and had a head injury. He finally got to come home from Houston to El Paso, and his wife called me. He was there one day, and he died. And she said he was in a room that had a fan, and he kept yelling, "We've got to jump, we've got to jump," thinking it was a chopper rotor. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's how long does PTSD last, for the veterans that have gone through this, last till death.
Okay, we have a tradition, we're not the only ones who have it. If you've ever attended a military event recently, probably in the last couple of decades, or even stepped inside a mess hall somewhere, or went into an Army recruiter's office, well, maybe not there. You may have seen, as we have back here, one table immaculately set up with a whole white tablecloth, single red rose, shining silverware, and a gleaming plate with a solitary empty chair. That is the fallen comrades table. For we Manchus, the table you see here represents the 428 young Americans who lost their lives while serving with the Manchus in Vietnam. Each element of that display, if you look at it, has meaning. The table is round to signify our never-ending commitment to remember them. The tablecloth is white to represent the purity of each of their hearts. A single red rose represents their loved ones and the burden they have borne. A single lemon slice conveys the bitterness of their loss, and a pinch of salt represents the tears we have shed, and their loved ones have joined us in sharing too. A glass rests turned over on the table and represents the inability of our comrades to share in our toast. So, if I may, here's to the fallen Manchus.
What a day this has been for us to share in the hard work that it took to put that presentation together, and how fortunate we are to have these men who are willing to tell their story and perpetually educate the next 50 years of generations. And on a personal note for me, before I pray, Stan and Rita Adams and David and Judy Hosenfeld, I've been fortunate to know them and their families for 4 generations, and that truly as well is a gift from God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we rejoice in the blessings of a wonderful day for this community and for the reach that this day will have beyond us. This will be a perpetual time of remembrance, encouragement, being educated and reminded of freedom's high cost and price, and for those who have paid it and continue to pay it. Like the likes of these we witness today, our hearts are filled with gratitude. In this fellowship time tonight, we pray that you'll bless those that set our table and ask you to use the food to give us physical strength whereby each of us can dedicate our lives to living for you. We pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Vietnam War was, after all, what did they call it? The living room war. They called it the TV war. Seemed like almost every night, and certainly every day, there was some television news coverage. Turns out records aren't that easy to come by, as he explained better than I could. In some cases, also, there's something to remember. It's just so much stuff just to go through. It seems like it's an endless task. And all of that stuff, if you want to be accurate and truthful, has to be verified. You can't just say it. And I also have to admit, I hope nobody's here particularly, the Department of Defense is not always very helpful. I give you as an example some research I did a long time ago. It wasn't until Jan Scruggs came along, the guy who got the Vietnam Veterans Memorial authorized and paid for by Congress. And then when it came time to decide on what the memorial would look like, and they decided it was going to be Violin's version with the names of all the dead engraved on this marble wall. And they found out, yeah, they had all the names, but they didn't have them in any sort of useful order. And then when it came time for a bunch of newbies on the internet to get involved in a project to try to identify the dead by unit of assignment, smaller than division. Those of you who are probably not all that familiar with Army organization, a division is usually something like 12,500 people. You could ask people who were with the Manchus, which in the beginning was just 3 companies, A, B, and C. You might know the guy in 3rd platoon, but you might not know the guy in 2nd platoon. And they were just, you hit them with a rock. That's how close they were. But you didn't necessarily know them. And you didn't necessarily know their actual names. The guy with the red hair? Oh, you mean Red? Oh, yeah. What was his last name? Well, that was one of those names with words in it. That you wouldn't know unless you got together and started talking. And so, long story short, I got involved with this online effort. I began by asking the Manchus who already met online, tell me the name of somebody that was a friend of yours who was killed. And I started with that, and I did the first effort at about 36 names. And then after a while, we had more and more and more. And by the 2000s, we had our first memorial service at the Vietnam Memorial in Washington. We had over 200 names identified. Well, the job wasn't even half over yet. So I stayed with it, and we finally ended up with 428 names. The project isn't closed. We're still looking for verification and making sure that we've got the right people assigned to our unit who were with us and served with us. And so it's open, and as long as I'm around, polishing and fiddling, making sure we've got it right. So it can be harder than it seems.
since so many of us came to Vietnam, as he pointed out so elegantly, as individual replacements, we didn't come as part of a unit and serve together and then go home. So so it was much harder for us when we came home to maintain that cohesion that we had when we were in Vietnam. Couldn't find people. You didn't come home and ride on the bus home together and say, see you on Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the coffee shop. That wasn't happening. We used to say things, and I know any of the Vietnam veterans, where you sat around one evening maybe, sometimes, and said, now once we get out to the world, we'll get together, we'll do stuff, In fact, it wasn't until Robert Dixon, the guy that many of you know as Willie, and in 1996 he created a website called Willie's Place. And Willie's Place was chronicling his Vietnam experience when he came over, not as a replacement, but with the very first Manchus in 1966 in April. He came then, and then he went back for his first visit to Vietnam in 96, 30 years later. So we had pictures from way back in 1966 of him and the Manchus, and him 30 years later. Well, on his website, he had a guest book page. And that guest book page was where people would sign and say, yeah, I'm a veteran too. And some guy would say, hey, I noticed you were with the Manchus, I was too. Oh, yeah? And then 3 guys would say they were, and then pretty soon he had 12 guys. And on it went, and suddenly we had a thing going. We were starting to find each other. By the time we got to maybe 150 names, Willie said we need a mailing list. So he created a mailing list. And we started regular email exchanges back and forth. And sharing all sorts of things, remembrances, all kinds of things. And finally the talk came around to getting together for a reunion. And so Willie and Larry Kreitzer, some of you may remember him, they were going to meet together at the parking lot of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas and have a beer. That's how it started. Except I said, wait a second, it's awfully hot in September. I'm not standing anything, and I'm coming too, whether you want me to or not. And so a bunch of us decided to go to Las Vegas and have the first reunion of the Manchus. Another one happened sort of in between this that I wasn't involved in, and it was very successful too. But in the end, that first what I call the first reunion in 1997 had about 8 guys. And then it was 30, and then it was 50. And then by 2000, we had 3,000 people in D.C. for the first memorial, 300, first memorial where we read the names of the dead. And that was a big deal for us. We started building on it, or tried to. I think about 26, if I do the arithmetic right, 26 reunions have come since we started it. And I venture to say, we're not done yet. We're going to keep doing it. As long as we're able. We're going to be meeting. See a lot of faces here that I got to know these reunions. So you have to ask yourself, well, why are you doing this? I mean, but I wanted to tell you a little slice of my life that maybe illustrates something about this. It was the day I came home. Up until that part of my life, it was the very best day of my life. Mom and Dad, 3 sisters, were there at the airport to greet me as I got off that Ozark Airlines plane in Galesburg, Illinois, my hometown. By the time I got home, the familial throng had grown to couldn't count it. We all managed to fit inside the house, which wasn't that big. They had a big welcome home, Uncle Larry on the garage. There was a big dinner, sort of a combination, birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, everything all wrapped together. And Mom made all my favorite food, my favorite cake, which I ate it all. I said, not all the food, just the cake. And it was wonderful. But even as I really wrapped myself in the warm glow of my family's embrace, I kept thinking of an event that had happened on the way home from here. I wasn't spat on by protesters. Opposed to the war, I was returning to the farm. I know it happened to some protesters, but nothing like that. The image I couldn't shake was what I saw as we drove home. The route from the airport went past the Kroger store. As we drove by, I glanced up and saw the door was open. A guy was wheeling out a big sack of potatoes to put on display outside of the cycle. And that image, it was almost like a bucket of ice water going like this. For I knew that every day I was going, every morning that I woke, wondering if it might not be up to the task, and that my endless ineptness as a 22-year-old zoo leader would cost someone his life, or that this day might be my last. That my coming home wouldn't be such a happy moment for my family and happiness. Every day I was gone, that guy at Kroger's had rolled sacks of potatoes out the front door and lived a normal life. There was something in knowing that while I had been greeting the dawning of each new day with anxiety, afraid of what might come, the grocery store clerk had been restocking the toilet paper and bagging the groceries just like always. Every day I was gone, every moment that crawled by as I held my breath had been just another day for some of the folks back home. But the Kroger moment also hit home for me that I can never find the words to explain to the people I love what my experience had been like. Coming home for Manchu to be a very mixed bag. And of course, for most of us, we try to make the good outweigh the bad. One of the best things that he exceedingly good business has been the fellowship, brotherhood of Manchus that I'm so glad to be a part of. I try to meet up with them as often as I can. You may be surprised to learn what we do at reunions. I know I was when I attended my first one. Tell war stories, you think? Maybe. But in more cases than most, than none, I can say, they are more about getting answers to the questions I had over the decades when I didn't know what happened to my old platoon sergeants, Francis Hamburg, or Doc Davis, or my RTO, Tom Odell. I wanted to know if Amboy had grown fat and sassy, ending his pineapple plantation back at home in Hawaii. Did Doc Davis go to medical school? Was he now the chief neurosurgeon at Mass General? Did Tom Odell join his dad as a towboat captain on the Ohio River? Or did his extraordinary skills honed after humping that Creek 25 radio, and he had ballooned into one of broadcasting's greatest stars? I may be different, but I never felt like I had the need to talk about the bad times. They already knew about the bad times. They didn't need me to remind them. And for me, just knowing they know helps. The things you couldn't talk about with your friends and family, they already knew. They were there in the mound. When sometimes in the evening we'd be sitting around talking, and we'd say, somebody would, what are you going to tell them when you get home about what it's like over here? And we look at each other, and nobody had a good answer for that. Words don't seem enough. Could you say, well, there was this guy I knew, we got to like real well, we were going to get together, home, buy a car maybe, and travel. See California. Patty died. We were both soaked in sweat. He wasn't. He had a leech stuck on the back of his neck, peeking out from underneath his shirt collar. I was going to tell him about it the next time we stopped for a break. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular at all until he dropped like a sack of potatoes. When this Rice Patty died, fell over sideways, didn't cry out, didn't say anything, he was just there. No one could say anything like that to people who care. How could they tell them about Thanksgiving or Mole City or any of the other things that happened to our battalion during the time we were there in the 4.5 years we were deployed there? The explanation, the tale of what happened would be like an attack on the family. In my mind, anyway, in a way you'd be forcing them to go through it too, unprepared for the truth of it. How could you inflict that on someone you care about? Family and friends. So that's maybe why you hear people say, well, he never talks about Vietnam. So we didn't talk about it, and maybe after a while our friends never really knew how to ask, so they didn't. And if friends did ask about Thanksgiving or Mole City or March 2nd, and those who lived through it tried to answer and then start to see the discomfort on their faces, then he knew he may have crossed the line, talking in such stark ways about the violence, brutality, and censorship. No one wants to unload that on someone, especially when it's so far out of the bounds of normal behavior, normal life, normal experiences. It sort of sounds funny, made up, just another war story. So maybe that's why so many of us have this bond and get together as often as we can. Because when you're with your brothers, there are some things you don't have to explain.
you.